The space station looked like it was dying. Captain Jake Morrison could see rust on the metal walls and flickering lights that barely worked anymore. The air smelled stale and old, like nobody had bothered to fix the filters in years. This was Station Outpost 7, sitting right on the edge of human territory, where nobody important ever came unless they had to. Jake's ship, the Horizon's Edge, needed supplies. It was a small exploration vessel with a crew of only 12 people. They had been mapping distant systems for 3 months now, and their food stores were running low. Station Outpost 7 was the only place to stop for another 2 weeks of travel, so here they were, docked at a dying station that smelled like desperation. "I don't like this place," said Lieutenant Paul Chen, walking beside Jake through the narrow corridors. Paul was his second in command, a careful man who always thought 3 steps ahead. "Half the vendors look like criminals and the other half look scared." Jake nodded. Paul was right. The station had maybe 200 people living on it, most of them traders, smugglers, or refugees from conflicts nobody wanted to talk about. The kind of place where you kept your hand near your weapon and didn't ask too many questions. They were heading back to the ship after negotiating for food supplies when Jake saw her. A small figure was crouched near a waste disposal unit in a side corridor, digging through garbage with thin, desperate hands. At first, Jake thought it was a human child, but as they got closer, he realized she was something else entirely. She had pale silver skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the dim light. Her eyes were large and amber-colored like a cat's eyes, but more intelligent, more aware. She was tiny, maybe the size of a 7-year-old human child, and so thin that Jake could see the shape of her bones through her skin. She wore torn clothes that might have been gray once but were now stained with dirt, and things Jake didn't want to identify. The child froze when she saw them, her whole body going completely still. It was an unnatural kind of stillness, like she had simply stopped existing. Her amber eyes fixed on Jake and Paul, wide and terrified. "Easy," Jake said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "We're not going to hurt you." The child didn't move. She didn't even seem to breathe. Paul touched Jake's arm, a warning gesture. "Captain, we don't know what species that is. We should report this to station security and let them handle it." Jake looked at the child's thin face, at the hollow cheeks and the desperate hunger in those strange eyes. He thought about his own daughter back on Earth, safe and well-fed and loved. He thought about what it would take for a child to be digging through garbage, alone and terrified on a station like this. "Go back to the ship," Jake told Paul. "Get me a container of soup from the galley. The chicken one that Betty made yesterday." Paul stared at him. "Captain, this is against protocol. We don't make contact with unknown species without proper authorization and safety procedures. She's a child, Paul. A starving child. Get the soup." Paul looked like he wanted to argue more, but he knew that tone in Jake's voice. When the captain made up his mind about something, especially something involving helping people, there was no point in arguing. Paul sighed and headed back toward the ship. Jake stayed where he was, careful not to move too quickly or make any threatening gestures. The child remained frozen, watching him with those unblinking amber eyes. Up close, Jake could see she was even thinner than he had first thought. Her arms were like sticks, and her fingers trembled slightly as she clutched a piece of something she had found in the garbage. "It's okay," Jake said quietly. "I'm just going to wait here. Someone's bringing food. Real food, not garbage. You can have it if you want." The child tilted her head slightly, a quick bird-like movement. Jake wasn't sure if she understood his words, but something in his tone must have gotten through. She didn't run. That was something. They waited in silence. Jake was aware of other people passing through the main corridor nearby, but nobody came down this side passage. It was like the child had chosen this spot specifically because nobody would see her here. How long had she been surviving like this? Days? Weeks? Longer. Paul returned after 10 minutes, carrying a sealed container. He handed it to Jake without a word, though his face showed clear disapproval. Jake took the container and carefully set it on the floor, then stepped back several paces. "It's soup," Jake said, gesturing at the container. "It's warm and it's good. You can have it." The child stared at the container, then at Jake, then back at the container. She didn't move for a long moment. Then, in one fluid motion that was almost too fast to follow, she darted forward, snatched up the container and backed away to the far wall of the corridor. She moved without making a single sound. No footsteps, no rustle of clothing, nothing. It was like watching a shadow move. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. That wasn't normal. No species he knew of could move in complete silence like that. The child crouched against the wall and opened the container with shaking hands. The moment she smelled the soup, something changed in her face. The fear was still there, but underneath it was desperate, aching hunger. She lifted the container to her lips and drank. She drank like someone who hadn't eaten in days, gulping down the hot soup so fast that Jake worried she might choke. But she didn't. She finished the entire container in less than a minute, then licked the inside to get every last drop. When she was done, she looked up at Jake with those amber eyes, and for just a second he thought he saw something like gratitude there. Then she set down the empty container, very carefully and deliberately, and disappeared. Jake blinked. One moment she was there, the next she was gone. He hadn't seen her move. He hadn't heard her move. She had simply vanished into the shadows at the end of the corridor like she had never existed at all. What in the hell was that? Paul whispered. Jake walked forward and picked up the empty container. It was still warm from the soup. Real. This had happened. A strange alien child who moved like a ghost had just drunk soup he had given her, and then vanished into thin air. I don't know, Jake admitted, but she needed help and we helped her. That's all that matters. Paul didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue as they returned to the ship. Jake filed a brief report about encountering an unknown species on the station, but he kept it vague. He didn't mention the child's condition or the fact that he had fed her. Something told him that information would cause more problems than it would solve. Over the next 2 days, while the Horizon's Edge took on supplies and made preparations to leave, Jake found himself thinking about the child. He walked past that same corridor several times, hoping to see her again, but she never appeared. He asked a few of the station vendors if they knew about a silver-skinned child living on the station, but everyone either claimed not to know or looked away quickly, like they were afraid to talk about it. On the morning of the 3rd day, the Horizon's Edge undocked from Station Outpost 7 and set course for the next system on their mapping route. Jake stood on the bridge watching the station grow smaller on the view screen. "Think we'll ever see her again?" asked Betty Warren, the ship's cook and medic. She was a round, cheerful woman in her 50s who had been furious when she learned Jake had given away her soup without telling her why. Then he had explained, and she had immediately started packing extra food containers, insisting that if they ever came back to that station, they were bringing enough food to feed that poor child properly. "I don't know," Jake said. "Probably not. That station's not exactly on the main routes." But he was wrong. 3 weeks later, everything changed. The Horizon's Edge was completing a survey of a binary star system when the emergency beacon activated. Paul brought up the communication immediately, his face tense. "It's from Station Outpost 7, he said. "Priority distress signal. They're requesting any nearby ships to respond immediately." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "What's the nature of the emergency?" Paul listened to the message, his expression growing darker. "They're not saying specifically, just that they need help, multiple casualties, something about the lower decks being unsafe." The crew looked at Jake, waiting for orders. The Horizon's Edge was 3 days away from the station at full speed. They were an exploration vessel, not a military ship or a rescue ship. They had no obligation to respond to distress calls from random border stations. But Jake thought about that little girl, starving and alone, digging through garbage to survive. If something bad was happening on that station, she would be in danger. Children always suffered most when things went wrong. "Set course for Station Outpost 7, Jake ordered. "Maximum speed. And send a message to the nearest patrol ship to let them know we're responding." The Horizon's Edge turned and accelerated, racing back the way they had come. Jake stood on the bridge and wondered what they were heading into. He wondered if the child was okay. He wondered why his instincts were screaming at him that something was very, very wrong. 3 days later, they would arrive at the station and discover the truth. The little girl had come back. But she hadn't come back alone. She had brought her mother. And her mother was something humanity had never encountered before. Something terrifying. Something that killed in. The Horizon's Edge came out of faster-than-light travel, and Station Outpost 7 filled the view screen. Jake had expected to see damage, maybe signs of an attack or a fire. What he saw instead was worse. The station looked normal from the outside, but every single external light was on. Every window blazed with illumination. The whole station was lit up like someone was trying to push back the darkness itself. "That's not normal," Paul said quietly. Stations on the border keep lights low to save power. Why would they turn everything on? Jake didn't answer. He was too busy feeling a cold sensation crawling up his spine. Something was very wrong here. Hail them, he ordered. The communication officer, a young woman named Lisa Hayes, opened a channel. A man's face appeared on the screen immediately, like he had been waiting right next to the communication console. He had dark circles under his eyes and kept looking over his shoulder nervously. This is Administrator Gregory Walsh of Station Outpost 7. Are you the Horizon's Edge? Captain Morrison? That's right, Jake said. We received your distress signal. What's your situation? Gregory's face twisted with something between relief and terror. Thank God, we need help. We need someone who can fight this thing. The security teams can't stop it. Nobody can stop it. Stop what? What's attacking you? We don't know, Gregory said, and his voice cracked. We never see it. It's in the lower decks. Started 5 days ago. Security teams go down and they don't come back. Or we find them later with their necks broken. No sounds, no warnings. No footprints. No sensor readings, nothing. It's like a ghost is hunting us. Jake exchanged a look with Paul. How many casualties? 13 dead. Another 7 missing. We've evacuated everyone to the upper levels and sealed off the lower decks, but people are terrified. Some are saying the station is cursed. Others are saying it's a monster. I don't know what it is, but it kills silently and we can't fight what we can't see. Jake felt his mouth go dry. Kills silently. Moves without being seen. Like a shadow. Like a small child who could vanish into thin air. We're coming aboard, Jake said. But we need you to tell me something first. Is there a child on your station? Silver skin, amber eyes, about 7 years old in human terms. Gregory's face went pale. The Valari child, yes, she's here. She appeared 3 days before the killing started. But she's just a child. She couldn't be doing this, Valari, Jake repeated. The name meant nothing to him. What do you know about her people? Almost nothing. They're rare, very rare. I've been administrator here for 6 years, and that's the first one I've ever seen. Some of the older traders say the Valari were warriors once before most of them died out. But that's just rumors and old stories. Nobody really knows. Jake made a decision. We're docking. Get your remaining security team together. We're going to the lower decks to find out what's happening. Captain, are you insane? I just told you that's where people are dying. I know, but sitting in the upper decks while something hunts you isn't going to solve anything. We need to find it and stop it, or at least find out what it wants. Gregory looked like he wanted to argue, but desperation won out. Okay, docking bay 3 is clear. I'll have my security chief meet you there. The Horizon's Edge docked smoothly, and Jake assembled a team. Paul insisted on coming, along with 3 of their best crew members. Betty packed a medical kit, muttering under her breath about stubborn captains walking into obvious danger. Jake took a weapon, something he rarely did. A simple plasma pistol, standard security issue. They met Gregory Walsh and his security chief in the docking bay. The security chief was a big man named Carl Porter, with scars on his face and the look of someone who had seen real combat. He did not look happy. You should turn around and leave, Carl said bluntly. Whatever's down there, it's not something we can fight. I've been in 3 wars and I've never seen anything like this. My people aren't cowards, but they're terrified. Some have already left the station on whatever ships would take them. Tell me about the bodies you found, Jake said. Carl's jaw tightened. Clean breaks. Necks snapped with precision. No struggle, no defensive wounds, nothing. Like they didn't even know something was coming for them until it was too late. One man was found in a sealed room with the door locked from the inside. Something got in and out without opening that door. Do you have security footage? Nothing useful. Sometimes the cameras flicker or go dark for a second or two. When they come back on, there's a body. We never see what killed them. Jake felt that cold sensation again. He thought about the child moving in absolute silence, disappearing like she had never existed. If she could do that, what could an adult of her species do? Take us to the lower decks, Jake said. Carl led them through the station. The upper levels were crowded with frightened people, families huddled together, traders packing their goods to leave. Everyone stared at Jake's group as they passed. Nobody tried to stop them. Nobody volunteered to help. The entrance to the lower decks was a heavy blast door that had been sealed. Carl entered a code and the door groaned open, revealing a stairwell leading down into darkness. The lights below were either broken or turned off. The power works down there, Carl said, but the lights keep getting shut off. We turn them back on and within an hour they're off again, Like something doesn't want us to see. Jake clicked on a flashlight mounted to his weapon. The others did the same. 6 beams of light pushed into the darkness below. Stay close, Jake ordered. Watch each other's backs. If you see anything at all, call it out immediately. They descended into the lower levels. The air was colder here, and their footsteps echoed on the metal stairs. Jake's light swept across walls covered in grime and pipes that dripped condensation. This part of the station was old, the original structure that everything else had been built on top of. It was a maze of corridors and storage rooms and maintenance tunnels. They reached the bottom of the stairs and entered a long corridor. Their lights made strange shadows on the walls. Jake could hear everyone breathing, quick and nervous. Even Carl, the experienced security chief, was tense. They walked for 10 minutes, checking rooms and corridors, finding nothing. Then Paul held up a hand, stopping everyone. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Jake listened. At first he heard nothing. Then very faintly he heard it too. Singing. A child's voice, soft and melodic, singing something in a language Jake didn't understand. The sound came from somewhere ahead, deeper in the lower decks. "That's the child," Gregory breathed. "That's the Valari child." Jake moved forward, following the sound. The others came behind him, weapons ready. The singing grew louder as they approached a large maintenance room. The door was open, spilling the only light in this section of the lower decks into the corridor. Jake stepped into the doorway and saw her. The little girl sat on the floor in the middle of the room, singing her quiet song. She looked healthier than she had 3 weeks ago. Her skin wasn't quite so pale and her cheeks weren't as hollow, but she was still too thin, still wearing torn clothes, still alone. She stopped singing when she saw Jake. Her amber eyes fixed on him, and then, incredibly, she smiled. It was a small, shy smile, but it transformed her face completely. "Hello," Jake said softly, lowering his weapon. "Do you remember me?" The child stood up. She reached into her clothes and pulled out a small device, holding it out toward Jake. It looked like a translator unit, old and battered but functional. A voice came from it, mechanical and flat, she remembers. "She told me about you. The human who gave food when she was starving. The one who showed kindness." Jake's blood went cold. That voice wasn't coming from the child. It was being transmitted from somewhere else. Someone else was speaking through the translator. Movement in the shadows behind the child. Jake's light swung up automatically and caught a glimpse of something tall. Something moving with that same impossible silence. Then it was gone. Melted back into the darkness beyond his light's reach. But that glimpse had been enough. Tall. Silver-skinned. Amber eyes that reflected his light like a cat's. An adult. The child's mother. "Show yourself," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. The voice came from the translator again. "I am here. I have always been here. You cannot see me because I do not wish to be seen." "The people you killed," Jake said. "Why, killed?" The mechanical voice somehow managed to sound puzzled. "I have killed no one on this station. 13 people are dead with broken necks," Carl growled. "If you didn't do it, who did?" Silence for a long moment. Then the child picked up the translator and spoke into it in her own language. The device processed her words. "Mother says the dead ones hurt people, hurt children, took things from weak ones. Mother watched. Mother learned their patterns. Mother gave them justice." Jake felt his world shift. "Justice?" "They were predators," the mechanical voice said. "I am a hunter of predators. Your people call them criminals, yes? The ones who prey on the helpless. They are the ones I removed." Gregory stepped forward, his face red with anger. "You can't just kill people. We have laws, courts, proper procedures for dealing with criminals. Your laws did not protect my daughter." The voice was calm, factual. "She starved on your station for 27 days before this human fed her." The child walked to the edge of the light and held out her hand toward the darkness. A moment later, a larger hand emerged from the shadows and took it. The mother stepped into the light and Jake finally saw her clearly. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with the same silver skin and amber eyes as her daughter. But where the child looked delicate and small, the mother looked like she was made of coiled steel. She was thin but clearly strong, with long fingers that moved with perfect control. She wore dark clothing that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Her face was angular and beautiful in an alien way, with high cheekbones and a sharp jawline. But what struck Jake most was how she moved. Even standing still, there was something about her that suggested she could explode into motion at any second. like a predator waiting to strike, and when she shifted her weight slightly, there was no sound at all. Not the rustle of clothing, not the scrape of a boot on metal. Nothing. "I am Lyra," she said, and this time her voice came from her own mouth, speaking heavily accented English. The translator must have been helping her learn. "This is Kira, my daughter. We are Valari. We are the last of a people your galaxy tried to erase." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Lyra's amber eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him want to step back. But he held his ground. 50 years ago, the Valari numbered in the millions. We lived on 3 worlds in the outer regions. We were hunters, yes, but we were also artists, philosophers, engineers. We had a civilization. Then the Coalition decided we were too dangerous to exist. "What coalition?" Paul asked. 7 species formed an alliance. They said the Valari were a threat to galactic peace. They said our abilities made us natural assassins, that we would always be used as weapons by others. They said it would be better if we simply did not exist anymore. Lyra's voice remained calm, but Jake could hear the pain underneath. They bombed our worlds. They hunted us across space. They offered bounties for Valari bodies, dead or alive. Within 10 years, most of my people were gone. Kira pressed against her mother's leg, and Lyra put a protective hand on her daughter's head. Those who survived scattered. We hide in the forgotten places, the border stations, the dead systems where nobody looks. We starve, we die slowly. My daughter and I have been alone for 3 years since her father was killed by bounty hunters. Lyra looked down at Kira with such love that it made Jake's chest ache. I could not protect her from hunger. I could not keep her safe and also find food. I was failing her. Then you gave her soup. The mechanical simplicity of those last words hit Jake hard. You gave her soup. Such a small thing. A container of chicken soup that his cook had made. But to this mother and child it had meant everything. "I'm sorry about your people," Jake said quietly. "I didn't know. Humanity didn't know. We're new to this part of space, I know. That is why I am here. You helped my child without knowing what she was, without fearing her, without demanding payment. That tells me something about humans. It gives me hope." Lyra crouched down so she was at eye level with Jake, and her movements were so fluid and silent that it was unsettling. "You asked what we are. I will show you, but do not be afraid. I will not hurt you or your people." Before Jake could respond, Lyra stood and walked to the edge of the light. Then she simply vanished. One moment she was there, the next she was gone. Not faded away, not slipped into shadow. Just gone, like she had been erased from existence. Jake spun around, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Where did she go? "I am here." Lyra's voice came from directly behind him. He whirled around and she was there, less than a foot away, her face calm and expressionless. He hadn't heard her move. None of them had. Carl raised his weapon instinctively, but Lyra was already gone again. She appeared across the room near the door. Then she was by the ceiling, clinging to pipes that shouldn't have been able to support her weight. Then she was back in the center of the room, standing beside her daughter. "We evolved as ambush predators," Lyra explained. "Our homeworld was covered in dense forests where sound traveled far. Prey animals could hear the smallest noise, so we learned to move without sound. Our bones are hollow but strong like a bird's. Our muscles are designed for explosive speed but with perfect control. Our skin cells can change temperature, making us invisible to thermal sensors. We can slow our heartbeat and breathing until we barely register as alive." She held up her hand, and Jake saw that her fingers were longer than human fingers, with joints that bent in ways that looked impossible. "We can climb any surface. We can squeeze through spaces half our size. We can remain perfectly still for hours. We are hunters. It is what we are. And killers," Carl said harshly. "Don't forget that part." Lyra looked at him without anger. "Yes, we can kill, efficiently and silently. That is why the Coalition feared us. They were right to fear us. In the wrong hands, a Valari is a terrible weapon. But we are not weapons. We are people. We have children. We sing to them. We tell them stories. We teach them to be better than the galaxy expects us to be." She knelt beside Kira and spoke to her in their own language. The child nodded and took the translator from her mother. "Kira wants to show you something," Lyra said. "She wants to thank you properly." The little girl walked up to Jake, moving with that same eerie silence her mother had. Up close, Jake could see that her amber eyes were full of intelligence and warmth. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, holding it out to him. It was a flower, a small white flower made from twisted pieces of wire and scraps of cloth. Crude but clearly made with care and love, Kira had made it herself with whatever material she could find. For you, the translator said in Kira's voice, because you were kind. Jake took the flower, feeling a lump in his throat. Thank you, Kira, it's beautiful. The child smiled, that same shy smile he had seen before, and stepped back to her mother's side. Jake looked at Lyra, at this dangerous, deadly woman who was also a mother trying to keep her child alive. He thought about the pirates, the Red Chain, who had killed so many innocent people. He thought about the colonies who lived in fear of the next raid. The pirates, he said. The Red Chain, they have inside information. Someone in the human fleet or government is feeding them our patrol routes, telling them which ships are undefended. We can't catch them because they always know where we'll be and where we won't be. Lyra nodded slowly. You want me to hunt them? I want to stop them from killing more families, more children. If you can help with that. If you can find out who's betraying us and stop the pirates, then yes. I'm asking for your help. This is insane, Gregory protested. You're asking an alien assassin to hunt human criminals? That's going to cause a diplomatic nightmare. The nightmare is already happening, Paul said quietly. The Red Chain hit another colony ship 2 weeks ago. 147 people dead, including 32 children. If Lyra can stop them, maybe we should let her. Lyra stood silent for a long moment, her amber eyes distant. Then she looked at Jake. I will do this. But I must tell you what will happen. I will hunt your pirates. I will find their leaders. I will kill them silently, one by one, until their organization falls apart. I will do this because you saved my daughter's life, and because preventing the deaths of children is a worthy cause. How long will it take? Jake asked. 2 weeks, perhaps 3. They will not see me coming. They will not hear me. They will simply die, and their followers will be too terrified to continue. Fear is a weapon as sharp as any blade. Carl stepped forward, his face troubled. What about evidence? Trials, justice? I am justice, Lyra said simply. That is what my people became when your coalition tried to erase us. We became the hunters in the dark, the shadows that balance scales. The Red Chain pirates have killed hundreds. They show no mercy. I will show them what it means to be hunted by something they cannot fight. Jake felt a cold certainty settle over him. This was wrong in so many ways. It violated protocols, laws, regulations. It went against everything the human fleet stood for about proper procedures and rules of engagement. But it would work. And it would save lives. Do it, he said. Hunt them, stop them. But Lyra listened to me carefully. Only the pirates. Only the ones who have actually killed people. Not informants, not associates, not people who might be involved. Only confirmed killers. Understood. Lyra put her hand on Kira's shoulder. My daughter will stay here on this station where it is safe. When I return, I will come for her. Guard her, Captain Morrison. She trusts you. Wait, Jake said. You're leaving her here? Alone? She will not be alone. The administrator will watch her. Lyra looked at Gregory with those intense amber eyes. You will make sure she is fed. You will make sure she has a warm place to sleep. You will protect her, because if anything happens to my daughter while I am gone, I will return and this station will become a tomb. Do you understand? Gregory went pale, but he nodded. I understand. The child will be safe. You have my word. Lyra knelt and embraced her daughter, speaking softly in their language. Kira hugged her mother tightly, and Jake saw tears on the child's face. Then Lyra stood, kissed her daughter's forehead, and looked at Jake one more time. The first report came 3 days after Lyra disappeared into the darkness. Jake was on the bridge of the horizon's edge reviewing survey data when Paul rushed in with a datapad. Captain, you need to see this. It's about the Red Chain. Jake took the pad and read the message. It was from a human patrol ship operating 2 systems away. They had found the body of Commander Victor Kane, second in command of the Red Chain pirates, floating in an escape pod. His neck was broken. There were no signs of struggle, no indication of how someone had gotten into a sealed escape pod in the middle of space. She started, Jake said quietly. Over the next week, more reports came in. The Red Chain's chief navigator, a man named Stuart Cross who had planned dozens of raids, was found dead in his locked quarters aboard the pirate flagship. The security officer who had personally executed prisoners was discovered with his neck broken in a supply closet. A weapons specialist who had designed the bombs used to destroy colony ship engines simply vanished from his bunk, never to be seen again. The pattern was always the same. No sounds, no witnesses, no security footage showing anything useful. Sometimes cameras would flicker off for a few seconds, and when they came back on, there would be a body. The pirates were terrified. Jake monitored the reports obsessively. Part of him was horrified at what he had set in motion. These were executions, pure and simple, carried out without trial or due process. But another part of him remembered the colony ship massacres, the children who had died, the families torn apart. The Red Chain had shown no mercy. Was it wrong that they were now receiving none? On the 10th day, Jake received a communication request from an unexpected source. The screen showed an older woman in a military uniform, her face lined with experience and authority. Admiral Helen Foster, commander of the Human Fleet's Border Security Operations. Captain Morrison, she said without preamble. I understand you recently encountered an unknown alien species at Station Outpost 7. Jake's stomach sank. Yes, Admiral. I filed a report about it. A very brief report that left out quite a lot of details, I suspect. Admiral Foster's eyes were sharp. I also understand that shortly after your encounter, someone or something began systematically assassinating Red Chain pirates. Would you care to explain the connection? There was no point in lying to her. Admiral Foster hadn't risen to her position by being easy to fool. The alien is called a Valari, Jake said. Her name is Lyra. She's hunting the Red Chain because I asked her to. Admiral Foster was silent for a long moment. You asked an alien assassin to hunt human criminals. I asked a mother to stop the people who are killing children. The Red Chain has massacred over 300 civilians in the last 6 months, Admiral. They have inside information. Someone in our organization is helping them. We can't stop them through normal means. So you decided to become judge, jury, and executioner? No, Admiral. I decided to accept help from someone who could actually make a difference. Admiral Foster leaned back in her chair, studying him through the screen. Tell me about the Valari. Everything you know, Jake told her. About finding Kira starving on the station, about giving her soup, about Lyra returning to repay the debt, about the genocide that had nearly wiped out the Valari species, about their abilities, their culture, their desperate struggle to survive. When he finished, Admiral Foster was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. 50 years ago, the Coalition tried to exterminate an entire species because they were afraid of what they could do. Now you're telling me we have a chance to ally with one of the survivors, and all it cost was a container of soup and basic human decency. Yes, Admiral. The politicians are going to lose their minds over this. The ethics committees will have a field day. There will be inquiries and investigations, and probably several people will lose their careers. Admiral Foster smiled slightly. Fortunately, I'm too old to care about any of that. Here's what's going to happen, Captain. You're going to stay exactly where you are and continue monitoring the situation. I'm going to quietly investigate who's been leaking information to the Red Chain. And when your Valari friend finishes her hunt, you're going to bring her to me for a conversation. Understood? Yes, Admiral. But I should mention that Lyra doesn't take orders well. She's not a soldier or an operative. She's a mother protecting her child and repaying a debt. I understand that, Captain. But if we're going to have Valari operating in human space, I need to establish some kind of relationship with them. At the very least, I need to make sure this doesn't turn into another coalition situation where we end up trying to kill each other. The communication ended, and Jake sat back in his chair, feeling a complex mix of relief and worry. Admiral Foster was a good person, fair and intelligent. If anyone could handle the situation properly, it was her. But Jake still felt responsible for everything that was happening. The reports continued. The Red Chain's leadership was being systematically eliminated, but something unexpected was happening too. The lower-level pirates, the ones who did the actual raiding and killing, were surrendering to human authorities. They were terrified, babbling about ghosts and demons, about death that walked unseen through locked doors and sealed compartments. On the 14th day, the leader of the Red Chain himself was found dead. Captain Henry Ward had been the architect of dozens of massacres, a cruel man who took pleasure in the suffering of others. He was found in his quarters aboard his flagship, the Crimson Blade, with his neck broken. The flagship had been surrounded by the entire pirate fleet at the time. Every security measure had been active. It hadn't mattered. With their leader dead and their command structure destroyed, the Red Chain fell apart. Ships scattered. Some pirates fled to distant systems. Others surrendered. Within 3 days of Henry Ward's death, The most dangerous pirate organization in human space had ceased to exist. Jake was reviewing the final reports when Lisa called out from the communication station. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Station Outpost 7. It's Administrator Walsh. He says it's urgent." "Put him through." Gregory's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired but relieved. "Captain Morrison." "She's back. Lyra returned to the station an hour ago. She's asking for you." Jake felt his pulse quicken. "Is she all right?" "She seems fine. Completely uninjured. It's like she went for a walk instead of hunting pirates across half a dozen systems." Gregory paused. "She's with her daughter now. They're in the same maintenance room where you first met them. She says she'll wait for you there. Tell her I'm on my way. We'll be there in 6 hours." The Horizon's Edge made the journey to Station Outpost 7 at maximum speed. When they docked, Jake took only Paul with him. This wasn't a military operation anymore. It was a conversation between people who had, against all odds, become something like friends. They found Lyra and Kira in the maintenance room, just as Gregory had said. The mother and daughter were sitting together, Kira leaning against Lyra's side. They looked peaceful, content like any parent and child enjoying a quiet moment together. Lyra stood when Jake entered. She looked exactly the same as before. No visible signs of the hunt she had just completed. No blood, no bruises, no exhaustion. Just the same calm, deadly grace. "It is done," she said simply. "The Red Chain no longer exists. Their leaders are dead. Their followers are scattered or captured. Your children are safe from them now." "Thank you," Jake said, and meant it despite his complicated feelings about how it had been accomplished. "You saved a lot of lives. I took lives to save lives. That is the way of a hunter." Lyra looked down at Kira, who was watching Jake with those big amber eyes. "But I also learned something during my hunt. I listened to the communications between your ships. I watched how your people reacted to the deaths. Most were relieved, happy that the pirates were gone. But some were troubled, concerned about justice and proper procedures. That's humanity," Jake said. "We argue about the right way to do things even when the results are good." "It is not a weakness," Lyra said thoughtfully. "My people were hunters. We were good at killing. But we never stopped to ask if killing was always the answer. Perhaps that is why the Coalition feared us. Perhaps that is why they tried to erase us. Your people question. You debate. You worry about right and wrong even when it slows you down. That is a kind of strength." Paul spoke up for the first time. "What will you do now?" "You and Kira?" Lyra was quiet for a moment, her hand resting on her daughter's head. "I do not know. We have survived, but survival is not the same as living. Kira needs more than I can give her alone. She needs safety, education, a future that is more than hiding in dark places and scavenging for food." Jake felt an idea forming, one that was probably crazy, but felt right anyway. "What if she stayed with us? With my crew on the Horizon's Edge?" Lyra's amber eyes fixed on him with sudden intensity. "You would take my daughter onto your ship? Not take her away from you, but let her travel with us, learn about humanity, see the galaxy from somewhere other than the shadows. You could come too if you want. Or you could visit her regularly. We could set up a schedule, whatever works best for you and her." Kira sat up straight, looking at her mother with hopeful eyes. She spoke. 3 months had passed since Kira came aboard the Horizon's Edge, and Jake's ship had become something entirely different from what it had been before. The crew had been nervous at first, unsure how to interact with a Valari child who could move without sound and disappear into shadows. But Kira had been patient with them, and they had been kind to her, and gradually something wonderful had happened. She had become part of their family. Betty had taken to the child immediately, teaching her how to cook human food and fussing over her like a grandmother. Kira had put on weight, and her silver skin had a healthy shine now. She wore clean clothes that Betty had modified to fit her small frame, and she smiled often, a dramatic change from the terrified, starving child Jake had found digging through garbage. Paul had started teaching her mathematics and basic science, discovering that Valari children learned with incredible speed. Kira could solve problems in her head that would take most humans several minutes with a computer. Lisa was teaching her English, and Kira was becoming fluent, though she still used her translator device when she needed precise words. But the most remarkable thing was watching the crew learn about Valari culture through Kira. She taught them songs from her homeworld, sang in a voice that was hauntingly beautiful, She showed them Valari games that involved incredible precision and silence. She drew pictures of her people's 3 lost worlds, describing forests and cities that no longer existed. Jake often found her in the ship's small observation lounge, staring out at the stars with those big amber eyes. He would sit with her in comfortable silence, sometimes for hours, just being present. She had been alone for so long that she seemed to crave simple companionship more than anything else. Today, Jake was teaching her how to make soup. The same chicken soup he had given her that first day. Kira stood on a stool in the galley, carefully stirring the pot while Jake supervised. "The secret is patience," Jake explained. "You can't rush good soup. You have to let all the flavors blend together slowly." Kira nodded seriously, her face scrunched up in concentration. "Like hunting," she said in her accented English. "Mother says good hunting is patient. You wait for right moment. Your mother is very wise." "Mother is best hunter in galaxy," Kira said with simple pride. "But she is lonely. I worry about her." Jake had been worrying about Lyra too. She visited every 2 weeks, appearing silently on the ship when they docked at various stations. She would spend a day with Kira, holding her daughter close and speaking in their own language. Then she would disappear again into whatever shadows she hunted in. The information Lyra provided had proven invaluable. She had discovered a smuggling ring dealing in illegal weapons. She had identified 3 potential security threats before they became serious problems. She had even found the human traitor who had been feeding information to the Red Chain, a low-level officer named Patrick Scott, who had been selling patrol routes for money. Patrick was now in custody, facing charges, but despite her usefulness, Lyra remained alone. The last of her kind, as far as anyone knew. A ghost warrior with no home and no people, doing what she could to ensure her daughter had a better future. "I think your mother is lonely too," Jake admitted, "but I don't know how to help her." Kira was quiet for a moment, still stirring the soup. "You already help," she said finally. "You show her humans can be good, that not everyone wants to hurt us. That is important." The communication system beeped. Lisa's voice came through. "Captain, we're receiving a priority message from Admiral Foster. She says she needs to speak with you immediately." Jake squeezed Kira's shoulder. "Keep stirring. Betty will help you finish." He made his way to the bridge, where Paul was already bringing up the communication. Admiral Foster's face appeared on the screen and she looked excited about something. "Captain Morrison, I have news. We've been analyzing the information your Valari contact provided about the Outer Rim territories. She mentioned something about a species called the Kalari, survivors of some kind of disaster. I had our research teams investigate." "What did they find?" Jake asked. "The Kalari were allies of the Valari before the genocide. They tried to help, to hide Valari refugees, but the coalition threatened them too. Most Kalari stopped helping because they were afraid, but some didn't. Some kept hiding Valari families in secret locations." Admiral Foster smiled. "Captain, we found them. There are at least 40 Valari still alive, hidden in a system on the far edge of explored space. They've been there for 30 years, protected by a small Kalari colony that never gave up on them." Jake felt his heart start pounding. 40 Valari. Kira isn't alone. Her mother isn't alone. More than that, Captain. Several of the survivors are children around Kira's age. There are even 2 other parent-child pairs like Lyra and Kira. If we can make contact, if we can offer them protection and support, we might be able to save the Valari species from extinction. When can we leave? I'm sending you the coordinates now. It's a 2-week journey from your current position. Captain, I want you to handle the first contact personally, you and Kira together. If any humans can convince scared Valari survivors that we're not a threat, it's the 2 of you. After the communication ended, Jake stood on the bridge, barely able to process what he had just learned. 40 Valari, a chance to bring them together. A chance to give Kira a community, to give Lyra hope for something more than survival. He needed to tell Lyra immediately. Finding her was the hard part. She never told them where she went or how to contact her. She simply appeared when she decided to visit. But Jake had an idea. He went to Kira's small quarters and found the translator device she kept there. Lyra had given it to her daughter, which meant she would have a way to monitor it or track it. He activated the translator and spoke into it. "Lyra, if you can hear this, we need you to come to the ship as soon as possible. We have information about your people, other Valari survivors. Please come." Then he waited. 1 hour passed. 2 hours. Jake was starting to worry that Lyra couldn't hear the message or couldn't come immediately. Then Lisa called from the bridge. "Captain, there's someone in the cargo bay. Sensors didn't detect anyone entering, but the internal cameras just picked up a figure. I think it's her." Jake rushed to the cargo bay. Lyra stood in the center of the room, her tall frame rigid with tension. The moment she saw Jake, she moved toward him with that silent, fluid motion. "You said there are others," she said urgently. "Other Valari, where?" Jake told her everything Admiral Foster had said. As he spoke, he watched Lyra's face change. The controlled, calm expression she always wore cracked, showing raw emotion underneath. Hope. Desperate, painful hope. 40 survivors, she whispered. 40 of my people still alive, still hidden, still afraid. "We can bring them together," Jake said. "Humanity will protect them. We'll make sure what happened before never happens again. You don't have to be alone anymore, Lyra. None of you do." For the first time since Jake had met her, Lyra completely broke down. She covered her face with her long-fingered hands and her shoulders shook. She made no sound, even crying in silence, but the grief and relief pouring out of her were overwhelming. Jake did something he had never imagined doing with a deadly alien hunter. He stepped forward and put a hand on her shoulder, offering comfort the only way he knew how. Lyra didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into the gesture, accepting the kindness like someone who had been starving for human touch. When she finally composed herself, she looked at Jake with those amber eyes full of tears. "You gave my daughter soup," she said. "Such a small thing. And from that small kindness, everything changed. You saved her life. You saved my life by giving me hope. Now you offer to save my entire species." "I'm not saving anyone," Jake said. "I'm just doing what any decent person would do. Helping when I can, showing compassion when it's needed. That is more rare than you know. I have lived in the shadows of 100 worlds. I have seen the cruelty that species inflict on each other, the casual disregard for suffering. Your humanity shows me something different. You are not perfect, but you try to be better. That is the important thing." Kira appeared in the doorway of the cargo bay, drawn by some sense that her mother was here. She ran to Lyra, and the tall Valari woman swept her daughter up in her arms, holding her close. "We are going to meet others like us," Lyra told her daughter in English, wanting Jake to understand too. "Other Valari. You will have friends, teachers, a community. You will not be alone anymore." Kira's face lit up with joy, and she hugged her mother tightly. "Really? Other children like me?" "Yes, little one. Other children. Other families. Perhaps even a future for our people." Over the next 2 weeks, the Horizon's Edge traveled to the coordinates Admiral Foster had provided. The journey took them through uncharted systems to a small planet orbiting a dim star. As they approached, they were hailed by a Kalari ship, a species Jake had never encountered before. The Kalari were insectoid, with multiple limbs and compound eyes, but their spokesman spoke perfect English through a translator. "Human vessel, identify yourself and state your purpose. This system is under Kalari protection." Jake explained who they were and why they had come. There was a long pause. Then the Kalari spokesman said, "We have protected the Valari for 30 years, hiding them from